A desperate and disturbed woman recruits a stranger from the internet to assist in her haunting quest to end her life. Frustrated with life and an unhappy marriage, Nancy Stockwell, a troubled internet entrepreneur addicted to pain, takes the bus to a train station. She is determined to meet an online acquaintance with sadomasochistic tendencies who has agreed to assist in ending her life. Meanwhile, following a car wash, Albert, the distressed woman's husband, returns home and notices he is alone. While organizing his mail at the dining table, he discovers a note from his partner stating her departure to Baltimore with friends. During Nancy's wait at the terminal, a dog named Walnut approaches her, encouraging her to pet the animal. Shortly after, the furry creature's owner, Louis Farley, arrives and warmly acknowledges the woman. He notes that she appears different in real life. Strolling towards the car, the troubled wife brings up the existence of two types of dog food, one for regular consumption and another meant for those who intend to eat their dogs. Hearing this, the man playfully tells his dog that their new friend has plans to have him as a meal. Back at home, Albert spots a razor on the bathroom floor during a phone conversation with his friend. After quickly touching the sharp item, he promptly ends the call and cleans his hands. Afterward, the man invites his friends and colleagues over, Stan and Billy, to let them watch a video for their golf company. After the presentation, the men commend the golfer for his excellent work. Following this, Albert brings his pals to the virtual golf playroom he built downstairs. As Stan practices his skills, Billy asks the homeowner about his wife's whereabouts. In response, the husband informs his guest that Nancy is in Baltimore and will return the next day. However, he discloses that this is unusual for his partner not to call when she is on a trip. Shortly after bidding his friends farewell, the concerned spouse reminisces about the day he witnessed his wife smiling while using her computer. He also recalls an incident where he accidentally rolled his golf ball near her door and caught her engaged in self-pleasing behavior. Intrigued, Albert takes a seat at the computer. He then presses the keyboard, which prompts the monitor to display the desktop. Meanwhile, while Louis takes the wheel, Nancy suggests a detour to an arcade for enjoyment. Inside the gaming hub, the distressed woman imitates the dance steps of a player on Dance Revolution. Soon after, she heads to the shooting arcade, aiming at virtual enemies on the screen. While the troubled entrepreneur engages in play, Louis inquires about how she recognized him as the chosen one for her request. In response, the woman explains that it was an instinctual feeling. Without delay, she shares her desire to wear a beautiful dress on her final day. Back at home, Albert listens to golf advice on the radio while relaxing in the bathtub. As he gazes into the bathroom mirror, he envisions his wife using the blade to harm herself. During one of Nancy's therapy sessions, psychoanalyst Carol inquired about the emotions preceding her urge to self-harm. In reply, the troubled woman bluntly states that she felt nothing. When the counselor probed into the nature of her thoughts, the patient disclosed that beyond the thoughts of her husband and hunger, her uncle, whom she knew cared deeply for her, also crossed her mind. Upon receiving this information, the therapist corrected her patient, reminding her that her relative had caused her harm and did not genuinely love her. However, the client persisted, asserting that she perceived her family member's actions as a form of affection and chose to reciprocate that supposed love. The internet entrepreneur also confirms that she enjoyed engaging in painful games with her uncle, revealing the origin of her masochism. Delving into her patient's remarks, Carol inquired whether Nancy felt accepted when someone hurt her, or she inflicted harm upon herself. In response, the client clarified that such experiences only made her feel something. She further revealed that her husband had never caused her harm, leading her to believe that he didn't truly love her. During Stan's talk at the golf company event, he thanked Albert for his contributions and then announced the start of the dance. However, as soon as the speech ended, Albert happily texted someone on his phone. Nancy then invited her husband to dance, and although he joined briefly, he abruptly left her. Consequently, she returned to her table alone and wanted to go. Later, the apathetic husband encountered his partner in the hall and requested that she set aside her feelings of sadness as it was a friend's special evening. In the present, following the arcade time, Nancy and Louis resume their journey. As they drive, he observes her dried flower necklace, prompting her to explain that it's a gift for her husband on their 10th anniversary. She underscores that the dried pendant symbolizes their marriage. Upon hearing this, the sadomasochistic man notes that the entrepreneur still has the option to change her decision about ending her life, to which the woman firmly responds that she met up with him because she is resolute about her decision. Upon arriving at Louis' apartment, Nancy notices numerous shelves filled with videotapes, leading her to inquire if there's one for her. Playfully, the man teases her that she's getting her shelf. Later, after having some drinks, they engage in intimate activities that involve some form of torture. Meanwhile, an anxious Albert's excitement builds as their phone rings. Yet, it's Carol's message for Nancy about a missed appointment. Hearing this, the husband promptly contacts Stan, sharing his concern that his partner has been unreachable for 2 days. After ending the call, he dials 911 but tosses the phone onto the table. Following their private yet painful bond, Louis drives Nancy to a boutique, where she tries on dresses for her final day. While she wears her chosen garment, the man admires her beauty, prompting her to purchase the clothing. Then they book a hotel room and spend another intimate yet torturous time together. Afterward, the man praises his partner's performance. Continuing their conversation, Nancy shares a story about her mother insulting her and confining her to a room for 5 days upon learning she couldn't conceive. After laughing at her traumatizing moment, she playfully envisions birthing golf clubs, considering it might capture her husband's interest more than the idea of having babies. Following this, Louis asks if they can stop what they're doing. However, the woman pleads with him to continue hurting her, prompting him to slap her face. She advises him to stick to their plan of ending her life. Days later, the end-of-life facilitator visits Albert's apartment, presenting himself as Nancy's server maintenance person responsible for virus protection. When the husband mentions his wife's absence, the pretending man inquires about her expected return time. However, the golfer acknowledges that he has no idea when his partner will return. Attempting to gain access, the technician mentions the impending expiration of the computer's firewall, emphasizing the risk of file loss for Nancy. Upon hearing this, Albert approves, permitting the maintenance guy to access his wife's computer. He explains that he also needs help sending the emails his partner had asked him to do. When Louis requests the device's password, the husband confesses to not knowing it, implying he doesn't care for his spouse. Quickly, as he powers on the machine, the server maintenance learns that the owner had no set passcode. As the technician inquires about the email task, Albert confesses that he fabricated the request and is trying to determine who his absent wife has been meeting with so he can get in touch with her. While Louis reviews the emails, he questions the worried husband about a person named Deep Hurt Farley, with whom his wife has been corresponding. However, just before delving into those messages, the golfer stumbles upon an email bearing his name and requests the server maintenance to open it. As the computer technician clicks on the message, Albert moves to the seat and begins to read the content that Nancy has left for him. Reading through, he gradually comprehends that she has chosen to depart from their unhappy marriage for her liberation. Meanwhile, the server maintenance man oddly opens his coat. Upon completing the letter, the concerned husband claims that the writing is not his partner's. Nevertheless, the guest suggests his wife might have connected with another romantic interest. However, the golfer rejects this idea, highlighting that his wife's activities mainly revolved around computer work. As Albert confronts the server maintenance guy, he notices him wearing the dried flower necklace, which unsettles him. He quickly excuses himself to get a drink when he realizes what's happening. Then he returns to the computer room and strikes the pretending maintenance man with a golf club. During a therapy session, Nancy candidly shared her vision of an entirely different life marked by a joyful marriage and the presence of children. When Carol inquired whether she and her husband had considered adoption, the woman mentioned that they had briefly discussed it before their marriage. However, her husband had brushed it aside, diverting the conversation by expressing his craving for Chinese food. This evasion pointed to his avoidance of the challenging topic. Following this conversation, Nancy excused herself and headed to the restroom, where she harmed herself with a blade. Sensing that her patient was hurting herself, Carol knocked on the bathroom door, gently reminding her there were alternative ways to find relief beyond self-injury. Upon exiting the lavatory, the patient fabricated a lie, telling her therapist that she had only changed her tampon. In the current moment, Albert restrains Louis, realizing that the man is Nancy's other partner as her emails indicate. Then, the furious husband questions his guest about his wife's location and demands to know what he has been doing to her. In response, the sadomasochist discloses that he had been engaging in intimate activities with the internet entrepreneur so she could help her break free from their unhappy marriage. However, Albert remains skeptical and rejects the explanation. The golfer insists that Louis groomed his wife and cites the emails as evidence of the manipulation. When the subdued man inquires why he didn't address his wife's distress, the provoked man strikes him with his golf club. This action leads the sadomasochistic man to sarcastically commend him, acknowledging his capacity to cause pain to others, which his wife would have liked. In the past, there was an occasion when Nancy put all the salt and mashed potatoes on her plate, playfully tossing the food onto her husband's face as a romantic gesture. However, the selfish Albert didn't find it amusing and declined to join her. That night, the woman tried to initiate intimate moments with her partner. However, the golfer turned down her advances. When she insisted, the man grew irritated and eventually became forceful. In the present, Albert awakens from his sleep and confronts Louis about what he's getting from his involvement with Nancy. In response, the bruised man points out that he feels hurt after engaging with a woman, adding that the golfer is experiencing the same too. As the concerned husband questions him about his wife's location, the sadomasochist reminds his captor that the internet entrepreneur is gone. However, the restrained visitor suggests that the golfer can still search for his partner, as the woman wants to be found. When Albert inquires about Nancy's well-being, the tired guest questions why the golfer suddenly cares for his wife only after realizing she has left him. However, instead of answering, the guilty spouse is speechless. Shortly after, the man reassures the worried husband that his partner is safe, making him feel relieved. A few days prior, following their intimate encounter, Louis accompanied Nancy's partner to a pet shop, where they came across a lifeless fish in one of the aquariums. Upon witnessing this, the sadomasochistic man inquired about the woman's perception of her passing. She responded, likening it to an awakening from a troubling dream. Then she boldly requested him to kiss her passionately in the store. When Louis inquired if she had any other requests, Nancy expressed her desire for her husband to experience the same loneliness he had subjected her to throughout the last 15 years of their marriage. She highlighted that sharing those feelings might finally find some common ground. During a meal at a restaurant later that day, the troubled woman asked her end-of-life facilitator how he had met his ex-wife. He shared that he had encountered her at a pet shop while selecting his dog Walnut. When Nancy questioned why they had parted ways, Louis hesitated to delve deeper, indicating that it wasn't within the scope of their arrangement. However, upon her persistent prodding, he eventually revealed that he had children from his previous marriage. When the sadomasochistic man inquired why she wanted to learn about his past, the troubled wife pointed out that she was nearing her final moment anyway. Abruptly, he asked why she hadn't kept her self-harming behavior to herself instead of involving him. Upon hearing the question, Nancy felt insulted and screamed at him for the other customers to hear. However, the man defended himself, claiming he only asked out of curiosity, not because he wanted to change her. However, the woman remained unconvinced by his explanation, insisting that he was attempting to dissuade her from carrying out her suicidal plan. The entrepreneur also pointed out that even if she were to divorce her spouse, she wouldn't find happiness because she would still have to continue living. When she caught the customer looking at her, Nancy rose and attempted to hit the diner, leading Louis to intervene. A short while later, the troubled wife angrily left the restaurant, prompting the sadomasochistic man to follow her. However, she merely requested to be taken back to the hotel. Along the way, they stopped at a hardware store for Louis to procure the items needed for their intended plan. However, things took an unexpected turn when the disturbed woman accidentally harmed herself using one of the tools, capturing the attention of the staff and other customers. Meanwhile, in the present, Albert feeds Louis and shares that he has hired courtesans because of his unhappy marriage with Nancy. He then openly admits that he couldn't handle his partner's mental issues. Suddenly, the sadomasochistic man proposes a deal to the unhappy husband. He suggests that if the golfer sends his dog Walnut to a caretaker, he will disclose Nancy's location. Fueled by concern for his wife, the golfer agrees to the request. During a therapy session, the frustrated internet entrepreneur took Carol's notes and questioned her credentials, expressing doubt about her ability to help with her issues. Feeling offended, the therapist ended the session abruptly, noting that the client needed to be willing to help herself for any progress. As the professional appeared agitated, a devastated Nancy sat on the couch, leading the counselor to offer a comforting pat on her back. At present, Albert arrives home and discovers unexpected guests when he goes downstairs to his golf playroom. To his surprise, he finds Louis, who is no longer restrained, engaging with Stan and Billy. Subsequently, the sadomasochistic man compliments the golfer, acknowledging his skill in constructing the virtual golf room. When Stan inquires about Louis' family, the bruised man reveals that he has 2 children he hasn't seen for years due to his ex-wife's refusal to allow him access. Shortly after, they ask about his connection connection to Nancy, prompting the man to reveal that he met the golfer's wife online due to shared interests. Continuing the conversation, the guest directs his attention to Albert, inquiring whether he had contacted the police regarding his missing spouse. The worried husband confesses that he hasn't, and then questions Louis about the actual location of Nancy. In response, the sadomasochist discloses that he had released the woman, indicating that he had carried out her request to end her life. On the day of the troubled woman's passing, Louis vented frustration in his apartment before going to the hotel to meet Nancy, indicating his hesitation to assist the woman in sending her off. Shortly after, he headed to the inn and saw the woman in her elegant farewell dress. Following this, they shared an intimate moment for the last time. During their private bond, the troubled wife casually asked her end-of-life facilitator if he would terminate her life while she wore the beautiful garment. When he declined, Nancy labeled him a coward for hesitating to continue with their agreement. In response, Louis admitted that he didn't support the woman's demise idea anymore, implying that he had fallen in love with her and wanted her to stay alive. Upon receiving this response, the woman's frustration escalated as it became clear she wouldn't attain her desired outcome. However, due to his romantic feelings for her, the sadomasochistic man ultimately strangled the woman, fulfilling her wish. Subsequently, the demise facilitator transported the lifeless body to a field. Years later, Albert switches on the television and replays a news clip from a year ago. In the footage, the news anchor discloses that Louis has received a life sentence without the possibility of parole for carrying out Nancy's disturbing online request for someone to end her life. Following this, the guilty husband goes through his late wife's belongings and reads her email exchanges with the convicted sadomasochistic man.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.